The town of Iron Hollow sat under a heavy sky, where dark clouds moved like slow rivers and distant thunder never truly stopped. Stone roofs leaned under old rain, narrow streets shone with damp light, and the shrine at the town's center stood higher than the rest, though time had worn its steps smooth and cold. Every day, the people looked up at the sky and feared the same thing, because the Empire's sky fortresses passed overhead without warning, and their chained storm beasts could turn calm air into a violent storm in a few breaths. The Empire wanted every town to bow, and it wanted the old shrines gone, because those shrines still held traces of the first giant guardians that once protected the land. If the last shrine seal was broken, the Empire could flood the whole region with fear and force every settlement into silence. Luke knew this well because he carried messages, prayer tags, and repair cloth for the shrine, and no one in Iron Hollow thought much of him. He was a low-ranked shrine courier, a man with black hair, plain clothes, and tired eyes, but he kept showing up before sunrise because duty mattered to him, even when praise never came. He wanted to prove that small work still mattered, and that hope did not need a crown to be real. That morning, Elder Ben, a gray-haired man with a calm voice and a bent back, sent Luke into the oldest storage room under the shrine, where broken tablets and sealed boxes waited in dust. Ben was the shrine keeper, and he feared the Empire's next visit would be worse than the last, because the Sky Fortress scouts had already been seen near the western ridge. Luke did not know that one cracked wall hid the center of the coming war. He only knew the room felt colder than the others, and that something in the stone seemed to call. Luke found the forbidden relic by accident when one loose shelf gave way and dropped an old black box onto the floor. Inside it rested a small iron shard shaped like a jagged seed, marked with bright blue lines that looked like lightning frozen in metal. He had never seen anything like it, and for one slow moment he thought it might be a shrine tool from long ago. Then the shard warmed in his hand, and the blue lines moved like living fire. A shock ran through his arm, and he nearly dropped it, but the relic clung to his palm as if it had chosen him. At the same time, a hidden force inside his chest woke up with a deep pull, like a giant door opening in the dark. Luke staggered back, breathing hard, and heard a low voice in his mind that was not his own, a voice that spoke of Titanbond blood, ancient duty, and a sleeping giant inside the bones of a chosen line. The relic was not just an object, it was a key, and it had found the last body able to answer it. Luke did not understand the full truth yet, but the danger was already clear, because the relic began to pulse each time thunder rolled over the roof. Elder Ben rushed in after hearing the sound, and his face changed the moment he saw the shard. He called it the Storm Relic, a forbidden piece sealed away by the shrine elders because it could awaken Titanbond power in the wrong body and burn that body apart if the mind could not hold it. Ben had hidden it long ago because the Empire had hunted every sign of Titan power, hoping to weaponize it for its own sky war. Now the relic had chosen Luke, and that meant the old seal was no longer safe. Before Luke could ask more, the outer bell rang in alarm. A scout was coming, and not alone. Captain Drake, a hard-faced man with brown hair and silver armor, marched into town with Empire soldiers behind him, and above them drifted a low sky fortress like a dark house in the clouds. Drake was the Empire's hunter of relics, and he wanted the shard because Emperor Vance had ordered every Titan trace gathered, tested, and turned into a weapon. Drake believed power belonged to the strong, and he thought Iron Hollow would break easily if he applied enough pressure. Luke, still shaken and confused, hid the relic under his coat and tried to act normal, but the relic's pulse made his hand shake. When Drake asked about shrine damage and old storage rooms, his eyes stayed on Luke a little too long. Luke felt it then, the first clear fear of the story, because he understood the Empire was already searching, and somehow he had become the thing they. The first clash came before noon, when the Empire sent down chained storm beasts to test the town's weakness. The creatures were huge shapes wrapped in iron harnesses and crackling chain rings, with bright eyes and storm sparks bursting from their backs. They did not roar like normal animals. They dragged thunder behind them, and every step made the street stones tremble. People ran for cover, and Luke stood frozen for one terrible heartbeat because he knew he was supposed to be only a courier, not a fighter. Then the relic burned hot against his chest, and the hidden Titan bond inside him surged upward like a giant hand lifting him from the inside. His arms filled with strength, his feet locked into the ground, and strange blue lines spread across his skin like glowing seals. He moved before he could think, pulling a broken shrine pole from the wall and striking the nearest chain hook aside with a force that shocked everyone watching. The beast lunged, but Luke jumped with impossible speed, landed on its iron harness, and slammed his palm into the relic mark in his own chest. A wave of power burst out, not wild enough to destroy, but strong enough to drive the beast back and crack the chain rings. The town gasped. Myra, a sharp-eyed young woman with red hair who served as the shrine's messenger and record keeper, stared at him from behind a stone arch. She was brave, quick, and smart, and she wanted to protect the shrine because she knew the shrine records held the truth of the old Titan War. She saw what Luke was becoming before he did, and she shouted for him to keep breathing, keep his feet steady, and listen to the rhythm of the relic instead of fighting it. Her words mattered because Luke's power rose and fell with his fear, and fear made the relic shake. Together, Luke and Myra forced the chained beast back through a burst of blue light, and the creature crashed into an alley wall in a spray of sparks and broken iron. The Empire soldiers withdrew the beast before it could be fully lost, but Captain Drake smiled as he left because now he knew exactly who carried the relic. That smile stayed with Luke long after the soldiers were gone, and the whole town began to look at him with the same mixture of hope and worry. He had become visible. That night, Elder Ben told Luke the full truth under the shrine lanterns. Long ago, the first Titan Guardians had stood between the sky and the land, and their power had not been stored in weapons, but in bonds between giant force and human will. Those bonds were rare and most people could never hold them, but the bloodline of the shrine couriers had been guarding one sleeping bond for generations. Luke's family had not been simple workers by accident. They had been the quiet keepers of a sealed line, and Luke's father had vanished years ago while hiding the truth from Empire agents. That was the twist Luke had never expected. His father had not abandoned him. He had taken the blame for stealing shrine records and then disappeared into the outer hills to keep the Empire away from the relic and the seal beneath Iron Hollow. Luke had spent years believing he had been left behind, and now that belief broke apart in one painful moment. Ben also revealed why the relic felt unstable. The Titan bond inside Luke was not fully awake, and if it burst too fast, it would overwhelm his body and erase the careful control needed to use it. The relic could either shape him into a protector or tear him apart with raw force, and that danger was why the shrine had forbidden anyone to touch it. Luke listened in silence, angry at first, then sad, then steady. He did not want power for pride. He wanted to protect the town that had mocked him, the shrine that had used him, and the people who had started to believe in him only after trouble arrived. Myra brought him old maps and shrine notes, and together they studied the sealed chamber beneath the town. They learned that the Empire's sky fortresses were not just flying strongholds. They drew power from chained storm beasts and from the same storm currents that fed the relic, which meant Emperor Vance was preparing a full strike to tear open the old seal and harvest the Titan bond for himself. Vance was not cruel for no reason. He believed the world needed order, and he thought fear was the fastest path to peace. In his mind, if he controlled the sky and the storms, no rebel town could ever rise again. His logic was cold, but it made him even more dangerous because he truly believed he would. Before dawn, Luke went to the sealed chamber with Myra and Elder Ben, hoping to learn one more lesson before the Empire returned. The room below the shrine held a giant stone circle, half buried in dust, with old sigils carved deep into the floor. When Luke stepped into the center, the relic on his chest answered the seal, and the chamber lit with blue marks that climbed the walls like living rain. He saw, in a sudden flash, a giant figure standing inside the storm, not as a full vision, but as a shape of ancient strength waiting to rise when called with purpose. The revelation was clear. The Titan bond was not only power, it was trust. It answered the person who could carry responsibility without using it for selfish gain. Luke had spent his life thinking he was too small to matter, but the chamber showed him that the last hope of the land had been waiting for someone ordinary enough to stay humble and strong enough to endure the burden. Then the shrine shook because Captain Drake had returned with the Empire's sky fortress overhead and a new chain beast load ready for attack. The roof thundered, stone dust fell, and the old seal began to crack as the fortress aimed a beam of storm light into the shrine grounds. Ben ordered Luke to run, but Luke did not run. He looked at Myra, who nodded once, and then he looked at the seal, which now glowed like a door opening. He placed both hands on the relic, forced his breathing steady, and let the Titan bond rise in a controlled wave instead of a wild burst. The blue light wrapped around him, his shadow stretched tall across the floor, and the chamber answered with a deep rumble from below. Outside, the first impact hit the shrine hill, and the battle for Iron Hollow began in earnest, with the Sky Fortress above, the chained storm beasts moving in, and Luke standing in the center of the awakening storm, no longer just a courier, but not yet fully a warrior either. He had taken the first step into a war that would shake towers, break chains, and decide whether the hidden Titan bond would save the land or consume the boy who carried it. The night storm gathered fast, and as the blue sigils spread across the stone, Luke heard his father's voice, faint and far away, calling him. Iron Hollow lay under a hard black sky, where wet stone streets reflected the blue flash of distant lightning, and every roof looked like it was waiting for a disaster. The old shrine stood in the center of town, small and tired, but it still held the prayers of the people, the records of the past, and the one secret the Empire wanted most. Luke, a young man with black hair, pale skin, and tired but determined eyes, stood near the shrine steps in his simple brown courier robe, dark cloth sash, worn boots, and small satchel, while the forbidden storm relic burned hot in his hand like a seed made of lightning. He had only wanted to deliver messages and relic wraps for Elder Ben, the calm old shrine keeper with gray hair, a bent back, warm eyes, tan robes, prayer beads, and a weathered staff. But now the relic had answered him, and blue Titan bond lines spread over his skin in glowing paths. The danger was clear even before the first beast moved into view, because if Luke could not control the bond, the relic might tear open something far older than the town could survive. And if Captain Drake reached him first, the Empire would turn that power into a chain for the whole land. Elder Ben stepped out from the shrine doors and raised his staff with careful hands, his face tight with fear that he tried hard to hide. He was not a weak old man, even if his body leaned forward with age, because he had spent many years guarding secrets buried under the shrine floor, and he knew exactly why the storm relic had been sealed away. Myra came fast from the side street, a young woman with red hair, sharp green eyes, and a focused expression, wearing a fitted dark shrine messenger outfit, a short coat, leather gloves, and a pouch full of records and seals. She had been tracking Imperial movements through town, and she had come because she believed the shrine still held the only map to the truth. Above them, the dark shape of a sky fortress hung over the clouds, its black and gold banners snapping in the storm wind, and its shadow covered half the town like a warning that never blinked. Captain Drake stood on the upper platform below that fortress, a stern man with brown hair, hard eyes, silver Empire armor with dark trim, a high-collared cape, and a command spear held like it was part of his arm. He wanted Luke alive, the relic intact, and the chamber below the shrine opened, because Emperor Vance had ordered him to bring back the bond hidden under Iron Hollow, and Drake believed control was the only way to keep the world from falling into chaos. Then the first chain storm beast pushed into the street, huge and crackling with energy, iron harnesses biting around its body, chain rings clanking as sparks scattered from its back, and the town finally understood that the Empire had not. Luke froze when he saw the beast, not because he was weak, but because he had never faced anything like it in his life. The creature lowered its glowing head, thunder rolled through its chest, and the chains around it snapped tight as if some unseen hand had dragged it forward. The beast was not truly free, and that fact made the sight worse, because someone had turned a living storm into a weapon. Myra shouted for Luke to move, and Elder Ben struck the shrine steps with his staff, which made hidden marks in the stone flicker in answer. He told Luke the truth in a voice that cut through the thunder, saying the relic was a key, the Titan bond was a seal, and the chamber below the shrine had been built long ago to keep a sleeping force from waking without a chosen heart to guide it. Luke looked down at his glowing hands and finally understood why his father's voice had reached him through the storm, because his family had not only served the shrine, they had guarded the bond for generations. His father had vanished years before while trying to protect the same secret from Imperial scouts, and his last task had been to guide Luke to this moment, even if the boy was not ready for it. That truth hit Luke harder than the thunder, because it meant his whole life as a courier had been only the road to something much larger, and he was standing in the center of a war that his father had already entered long ago. Captain Drake gave the order to advance, and Imperial soldiers moved from the mist at the street ends with shields, spears, and storm lanterns. They did not rush in with rage, because Drake was too controlled for that, and that calm made him more dangerous. He believed the Empire should rule the Sky Fortress, the Shrine, the Relic, and the Beast, because if one hidden bond could shake the land, then Vance wanted that power locked in Imperial hands before any rival could use it. Luke tried to step back, but the blue lines on his arms pulsed brighter, and the Storm Relic grew so hot that his grip trembled. Elder Ben called out to stay near the shrine circle, while Myra scattered Imperial seal papers across the wet stones to slow the soldiers and blind their march. The beast lunged, chains screaming, and the street shook as a clash of storm force and steel rolled across the town square. Luke raised his free hand without knowing why, and the sigils on the shrine floor answered him, glowing brighter as if the stone itself had been waiting for his touch. Then the ground opened with a low stone grind, revealing a stairwell hidden beneath the shrine altar, and the voice of his father came again, faint but clear, telling him to go below before the fortress found the chamber first. Myra grabbed Luke's sleeve and pulled him toward the hidden stairs, but she did not move like a scared girl running blind. She moved like a careful guardian who had chosen her side long before the battle began. Her red hair flashed in the lightning as she looked back once, measuring the soldiers, the beast, and Drake's next move. She told Luke that the records in her pouch proved the Empire had searched Iron Hollow for months, because Vance believed the chamber held a storm engine older than the Sky Fortress itself. If he could bend the Titan bond to that engine, he could stretch his rule over every road, every shrine, and every town under the clouds. That made the stakes plain, because this was not only about one relic or one boy, but about a kingdom being locked inside fear. Luke followed Elder Ben and Myra down the stairs into cold darkness, while the sounds above them turned into a heavy pounding of boots and chain rings. The tunnel walls were damp and narrow, and old carved marks lined the stone like forgotten warnings. At the bottom, they reached the Titan Seal Chamber, a vast round room under the shrine with a giant circle carved into the floor, blue sigils sleeping in the dust, and power marks hidden in every wall. Luke stepped forward, and the relic in his palm answered with a sharp flash, as if it had finally found the place where it belonged. The chamber did not just glow, it woke. Blue light spread from the floor in clean lines, and the carved circle began to turn in slow pieces, revealing hidden layers beneath the stone. Luke saw shapes in the light, not full visions, but enough to understand the twist he had never expected. His father had not vanished by mistake, and he had not run away from the shrine either. He had helped seal the chamber from the inside, because Emperor Vance's people had once tried to force the bond awake without a human will strong enough to guide it. That failed attempt had created the chained storm beast above, a broken guardian that now served the Empire because Drake had learned how to tighten fear around its harness. Elder Ben confirmed the truth with a tired nod, saying Luke's father had left because he knew the relic would one day call Luke, and only Luke could finish the seal or break it open safely. Luke felt anger rise, but it was not only anger at the Empire. It was anger that his father had carried this burden alone, and sorrow that the truth had been hidden from him for so long. Yet the chamber also showed him something else, a path of blue light leading deeper into the earth, meaning the next truth was still below, and the real heart of the Titan bond had not been reached yet. Above them, the fortress thundered closer, and Drake's voice echoed down the stairwell, cold and steady, promising that he would take. Luke stood in the blue glow, and for the first time, he did not feel like a message runner caught in the wrong place. He felt the weight of the bond, the fear of the town, the trust of Elder Ben, and the fierce loyalty in Myra's eyes, and all of it pushed him toward a new choice. He was still afraid, and that mattered, because bravery meant little if fear had vanished completely. But now he understood that fear did not have to decide the next step. He closed his fingers around the storm relic, breathed once, and let the blue lines on his skin settle into a steady shine instead of a wild pulse. Then he turned toward the deeper passage and said he would go farther, even if the chamber was meant to break him open. Elder Ben looked at him with relief and sadness together, because he could see the boy becoming a guardian before his own eyes. Myra pulled her records tight against her chest and said she would lead the way, because someone had to read the old signs and keep him alive. Above them, the storm beast roared once more, and the hidden chamber trembled, but the stairs below the circle had already begun to open. Luke moved forward with his new burden, not as a courier, not yet as a full warrior, but as the one person the storm had chosen. The stairs under the carved circle opened with a slow, grinding sound, and cold air rose from below like a breath from a buried world. Luke stood at the edge of the opening, the small iron shard tight in his hand, while blue lines glowed softly across his skin and made his pale face look even more tired. Myra, a young woman with red hair and sharp green eyes, kept one hand on her pouch of records and seals, because she knew the old shrine marks better than anyone alive in Iron Hollow. The town above them was still under the shadow of the Empire Sky Fortress, and the storm beast was still chained somewhere beyond the stone, which meant their problem was no longer simple. If the relic and the seal failed, the hidden power under the shrine could wake in the wrong way, and the Empire would use that power to tighten its grip on every house, roof, and road in town. That was why Luke had to keep moving, even though every part of him wanted to ask why the storm had chosen him at all. Myra looked back once at the trembling chamber and said they had to go now, because fear would only help Captain Drake find them faster. They stepped down into the dark, and the stairs bent deeper than either of them expected. The chamber below was not a single room, but a long stone throat lined with old blue marks that glowed when Luke got close. His brown shrine courier robe brushed the walls as he moved, and his worn boots splashed through thin water that had gathered on the steps over many years. Myra walked ahead in a careful, quick rhythm, reading the signs on the walls and whispering what they meant, because she was a shrine messenger who trusted facts more than guesses. She told Luke that these marks were not only warnings, but also instructions left by the first shrine keepers, who had sealed something huge below the town and hidden the key inside the relic. Luke asked what kind of thing was sealed there, and Myra answered that the old records called it a Titan bond, a power that could steady the storm or tear it open. That answer made Luke's stomach tighten, because he had only wanted to deliver messages, not carry a force that could change a whole town. Yet the relic in his hand warmed again, as if it understood every word, and the blue marks on the wall pulsed back in answer. At the end of the steps, they reached a wide underground hall with a low ceiling and broken pillars. In the middle of the floor sat another carved circle, larger than the one above, and its blue sigils were faded but still alive. Elder Ben was already there, waiting beside a stone table with his weathered staff in one hand and his prayer beads in the other. He was an older man with gray hair, a bent back, and warm eyes that usually calmed others, but now those same eyes carried deep worry. He had guided shrine work for many years, and he had kept secrets because he feared what would happen if the wrong hands learned the truth. He told Luke that the Empire had not found the relic by luck, because Emperor Vance had been hunting this chamber for a long time through soldiers, maps, and paid traders. Vance wanted the hidden Titan power because it could help him control the Storm Beast and force the Sky Fortress to rule without challenge. Captain Drake, his stern commander with brown hair, hard eyes, and silver armor trimmed in dark metal, had been ordered to bring Luke in alive if possible, because the Empire still needed the chosen bond to open the seal. That was the ugly truth, and it made Luke realize he was not just being chased, he was being claimed. Elder Ben finally spoke the part he had hidden from Luke for too long. Long ago, when Iron Hollow was still young, shrine keepers had found that the storm above the town was not natural, and that a sleeping Titan force rested below the stone. They built the seal chamber to keep the force calm, because if the storm and the Titan bond woke together without a guide, they would spread fear and ruin through every street. Ben admitted that he had told Luke to work as a courier because he wanted to keep him away from danger, but he had also watched Luke for years because the boy had always reacted strangely to thunder, as if something in the sky recognized him. Luke felt anger rise first, then hurt, because he heard the truth inside Ben's apology. Ben had not lied to be cruel. He had lied because he was afraid that the Empire would find Luke sooner if he knew the boy mattered. Myra stepped between them before the moment could break, and she said the real enemy was not the old secret, but the Empire waiting above them. Her calm voice gave Luke something solid to hold on to, and he realized that trust would have to be chosen now, not assumed. Then the chamber shook hard enough to make dust rain from the ceiling. Above them, the chained storm beast roared again, and the sound traveled through the stone like a hammer through wood. One of the blue sigils on the floor flashed, and Luke's hand opened on its own, sending the forbidden iron shard down into the center of the circle. The relic struck stone and erupted with bright blue light, so sudden and strong that Myra had to shield her eyes. The lines on Luke's arm and neck burned brighter, and for one sharp moment, his whole body felt like a bridge between the storm above and the seal below. The floor circle opened in thin segments, revealing a deeper shaft beneath the chamber, and from that darkness came a pulse like a giant heartbeat. Elder Ben stepped back, his face turning pale because he understood what the pulse meant. The Titan bond was not only a power, it was a sleeping will, and it had just answered Luke. Luke stared into the opening and saw shapes moving far below, huge and slow, hidden by mist and old stone. He did not know if they were part of the seal or part of the thing behind it, but he knew one thing with painful clarity. Whatever waited under Iron Hollow had just noticed him. Before they could react, Myra's head snapped up toward the stairway behind them. She heard boots, many boots, and the hard metal rhythm of soldiers closing in. Captain Drake had found their trail, and he had brought a full squad to the lower shrine. Drake entered the hall a moment later, silver armor flashing in the blue light, his command spear held low and ready. He was not shouting like a wild brute. He was calm, which made him more dangerous because every move looked practiced and certain. He told Luke to hand over the relic and come quietly, and he promised that the Empire would spare the town if the seal was opened under Imperial control. Luke almost believed the lie for 1 second, because fear can make even a cruel promise sound safe. But Myra saw through it at once. She said Drake was there for the same reason Vance wanted the Sky Fortress above them, because the Empire did not want peace. It wanted obedience. Drake's soldiers spread out in a careful line, trying to corner the 3 shrine keepers against the glowing circle, while the storm beast thundered overhead and made the whole hall shake again. Luke stood between the soldiers and the opening, his blue marks burning, his heart pounding, and his choice becoming clear. He was no longer just a courier carrying messages from one place to another. He was the one. Elder Ben gripped his staff and began to speak the old shrine words, not as a prayer for comfort, but as a command to wake the seal in the right way. Myra pulled out her records, spread them with shaking hands on the edge of the stone table, and started reading the mark sequence as fast as she could. Luke looked at both of them and understood something that changed him inside. Ben had carried fear for years, but he still chose to protect the town. Myra had every reason to run, but she stayed because knowledge only mattered if it could save someone. Drake took a hard step forward and the soldiers raised their weapons, but Luke did not back away. Instead, he lifted the relic with both hands, and the blue light answered him like it had been waiting all his life. The chamber filled with humming energy, the lines on the floor rose brighter, and the opening below widened just enough to show a vast stone shape moving in the dark. No one in the room could fully see it yet, but everyone could feel its weight. Drake stared into that opening with a rare crack in his cold face, and even he seemed unsure for the first time. Luke felt the storm inside him steady, not because he was no longer afraid, but because he finally knew what he was fighting for. Above them, the Empire was still coming, and below them, the ancient power was waking, so Luke and Myra. The chamber below Iron Hollow felt older than the town above it, and colder too, with stone walls that held the silence of many lost years. Blue light moved across the floor in slow waves, and every crack in the carved circle seemed to wake with it. Luke stood in the center of that glow, a young man with black hair, pale skin, and tired eyes that had finally found a reason to stay open. He wore his simple brown shrine courier robe, a dark cloth sash, worn boots, and a small satchel that had once carried messages and relic wraps, but now carried the weight of a choice that could change everything. Beside him stood Myra, a young woman with red hair, sharp green eyes, and the steady focus of someone who never wasted emotion. Her dark shrine messenger coat fit close to her body, and her leather gloves kept tight hold on the pouch of records and seals at her side. Across from them, Captain Drake watched from the edge of the opening, a stern man with brown hair, hard eyes, and silver Empire armor with dark trim, his high-collared cape hanging still as stone. He held his command spear low, but his posture had shifted because for the first time his cold confidence had a crack in it. Above them, the Empire still came. Below them, the ancient power still woke. Everyone in the chamber knew the stakes now. If the Empire took the relic, it would use the Storm Beast and the Titan Bond to crush every shrine town in the valley. If the relic stayed hidden, the seal might weaken and the chamber might take Luke with. Elder Ben stepped into the blue light last, bent back and weathered staff in hand, his gray hair falling loose around a calm face that could hide deep worry only for so long. He had the look of a gentle old man, yet he also carried secret knowledge that had shaped this whole night. He had long served the shrine, long guarded the old records, and long feared the day when the relic would find a person it could wake. Now that day had come, and he finally had to speak plainly. He told Luke that the Storm Relic was not a simple weapon, but a key that answered to a Titan bond buried in the land. Long ago, people sealed that bond because they learned the hard truth. The power did not just give strength, it listened. It tied itself to a human heart, and if that heart was ruled by greed or fear, the power became a chain instead of a gift. Luke listened while the blue lines on his arms glowed brighter, and he understood why Ben had always seemed torn between trust and silence. Ben had not been hiding the truth to protect himself. He had been hiding it because Emperor Vance had been hunting this chamber for years, and Ben had feared the Empire would turn an old guardian bond into a tool of control. Myra looked at the old man with sharp suspicion, then with sudden respect, because she could see now that his secrets had been a shield, not a betrayal. Drake also heard the truth, and his hard face changed in a way that no one in the chamber missed. He had expected a simple Imperial prize, but now he stood before a history that made his mission look much darker. He asked who had built the seal, who had hidden the relic, and why the Empire wanted it so badly. Ben answered each question with the same sad patience. The first shrine keepers had built the seal to protect the valley from a storm beast bound in iron harnesses far below the mountain ridge. Emperor Vance had learned of that creature and wanted to force it into his service. He did not seek protection for the people. He sought perfect control. He wanted the storm beast above his own troops, the Titan bond in his own hands, and the fear of both in every town between Iron Hollow and the capital. That truth changed the air in the chamber because now the enemy was no longer a shadow. A deep tremor rolled through the stone before anyone could answer, and dust slipped from the ceiling in thin lines. Myra turned first, her green eyes narrowing toward the stairs that led up to the shrine because she had the fastest instincts in the room. Drake heard it too, and his grip tightened on the command spear as Imperial boots began to strike the halls above. The Sky Fortress had not landed, but its shadow was heavy enough to press against the earth, and its storm engines filled the town with a low metal hum. Then a voice came down the stone passage, sharp and orderly, carrying the confidence of a man who had never expected resistance. It was Drake's second commander, a tall Imperial officer named Silas, a man with black hair, a narrow face, and a polished silver breastplate that made him look more like a blade than a soldier. Silas called for surrender in the name of Emperor Vance and promised that the town would be spared if Luke handed over the relic at once. Myra almost laughed because she knew threats dressed up as mercy. Ben lowered his eyes because he knew how the Empire worked. Luke did not answer right away. He felt the Titan bond under his skin pulse once, then twice, like a heartbeat that was not fully his own. He was still afraid, and that fear was real, but it no longer ruled him. He remembered the empty faces in Iron Hollow, the shrine children hiding behind shelves, the shopkeepers trying to keep their doors closed against a force that did not care who suffered. He remembered that the relic had not chosen him for power. It had chosen him because he still cared when it would have been easier not to. That thought steadied him more than any promise. He looked at Myra, and she nodded without needing a word. She reached into her pouch, pulled out a seal marked with the old shrine signs, and pressed it into his hand. It was not magical by itself, but it was a promise. Then the chamber answered. The carved circle on the floor lit up in brighter blue lines, and the relic in Luke's satchel burst with hot lightning along its jagged edges. The iron shard shaped like a seed floated free for a moment, hanging above Luke's palm as if it had always known him. Blue Titan bond lines spread across his forearm and up his neck, clean and bright, not painful but intense enough to make him gasp. The stone floor opened in layers, each ring turning with a deep grinding sound, and a shaft of light climbed up from beneath the shrine. Through that opening, everyone saw part of the truth at last. Below the chamber was not a simple basement or hidden storage room. It was a much larger vault, carved with huge symbols, broken chains, and the outlines of a vast figure that had once rested inside. A storm beast had been held here long ago, or perhaps many storm beasts had passed through this place, because the marks of iron harnesses covered the stone like scars left by a long struggle. Far below, something moved. Heavy chain rings scraped stone, blue sparks jumped along dark metal. A huge eye opened in the gloom, bright and wild, and the entire chamber shook with its first warning breath. Myra stepped back, but she did not flee. Elder Ben whispered a prayer under his breath, not to end the danger, but to ask for strength. Drake stared down into the shaft, and for the first time his voice lost its iron edge. He understood now that Emperor Vance had not sent him to recover a relic, he had sent him to awaken a prison. That was the twist hidden under all the orders and banners. The Empire did not just want the relic because it was powerful. It wanted to rouse the chained storm beast, bind it to the Titan bond, and use the creature as the core of a weapon that could sweep every shrine town clean. Drake's loyalty faltered because he could finally see the scale of the lie. Sailors, still in the passage above, barked for the soldiers to advance, and armored feet began to push. Luke felt the relic pull hard in his hand, as if asking him to choose a side at once. He could sense the beast below, not as a monster, but as a bound and furious life trapped in iron for too long. The bond in his body was not controlling him, but it was giving him sight. He understood that the creature had been made dangerous by its chains, and that fear had fed the long prison around it. If the seal broke wrong, the chamber might collapse, the town might be shaken apart, and the Empire would take the chance to claim what remained. But if he could steady the bond, if he could answer the relic with calm instead of panic, he might open a path that would free the beast without letting the Empire seize it. Myra saw the same danger in his face, and she moved to his side with quick, sure steps. She lifted her seal pouch, spread the records on the floor, and found the old pattern of the chamber lock. Her red hair fell over one shoulder as she worked, and her voice stayed level even while the ground trembled. She told Luke that the seal had 3 parts, not one. The relic was the key, the bond was the hand, and the human will was the guide. That was why the first keepers hid the truth. They did not trust power alone, they trusted a person who would choose restraint. Luke breathed in, then out, and let the blue lines on his skin settle instead of surge. He placed his hand over the floating shard, and the light around him grew steadier. Above them, Imperial soldiers reached the upper stair. Below them, the storm beast shifted again, and the chains shouted against the stone. Drake stepped forward at last, not toward the relic, but toward the stairway, and he raised his spear to block Sela's first rush. His choice was small compared to Luke's, but it mattered just as much. He had not yet fully broken from Emperor Vance, but he had chosen the truth over easy obedience. That choice split the room into open conflict. Ben gripped his staff with both hands and prepared to hold the chamber steady. Myra kept her eyes on the seal work. Luke stood at the center of blue light, fear still in him, but no longer alone in it. The vault rumbled, the Empire shouted above, and the storm beast below pressed one massive. The chamber under Iron Hollow was never quiet, but now it felt alive with danger because every stone seemed to listen, and every breath seemed too loud. Blue light ran across the carved floor, shadows jumped against the walls, and the old seal marks pulsed like a second heartbeat beneath the shrine. Luke stood in the center of that light, a young man with black hair, pale skin, and tired eyes that still refused to look away. He wore his simple brown shrine courier robe, a dark cloth sash, worn boots, and a small satchel that held messages and relic wraps, but none of that looked ordinary now, because the storm relic inside his hands had begun to answer the thunder above. Beside him, Elder Ben, an older man with gray hair, a bent back, warm eyes, and a calm face, held his weathered staff with both hands, and his layered tan shrine robes shook with the strain of keeping the chamber steady. Myra, a young woman with red hair, sharp green eyes, and a focused expression, moved fast at the seal work in her fitted dark shrine messenger outfit, her short coat tight at the waist, her leather gloves smudged with dust, and her pouch of records and seals open at her side. Above them, Captain Drake, a stern man with brown hair, hard eyes, and silver Empire armor with dark trim, shouted orders through the rumble, while his high-collared cape snapped in the wind and his command spear pointed toward the hidden door. Far above him, Emperor Vance stayed unseen, but his black and gold banners and storm sigils had already turned the whole town into a cage. Below the chamber, the chain storm beast pressed one massive shape against the old iron rings, and the giant creature's crackling power made the floor shiver. The problem was clear now, and it was not small. If the seal failed, the beast would surge free, the Empire would seize the relic, and Iron Hollow would become a tool of fear instead of a home. Ben felt the tremor first because he had spent more years with old stone than with sleep, and he knew the difference between a warning and a collapse. He planted his staff harder, breathed in slowly, and pushed his strength into the runes beneath his feet. The sigils answered with a pale blue pulse, then flickered, then held for one more moment. Myra did not look up from her work because she was the kind of person who trusted motion more than panic. She was a shrine messenger, trained to carry records, keep seals, and notice what others missed, and right now she wanted only one thing: to keep the chamber from tearing apart long enough to finish the truth that Luke had begun. Her red hair stuck to her cheek as she slid a brass seal strip into place, and her sharp green eyes tracked the pattern with exact care. "Do not let the ring split," she said, not because she expected comfort, but because she needed the room to remember the task. Luke looked from Ben to Myra, then down at the storm relic in his own hands. The shard was small and ugly, shaped like a jagged seed, but its etched blue lines burned brighter each time thunder rolled above the shrine. It had chosen him, or maybe trapped him, and he still did not know which was worse. Yet the fear in his chest no longer felt like a wall. It felt like something he could carry. That change mattered because only a little while ago he would have obeyed the Empire to keep others safe, but now he understood that easy obedience could become a trap with a polished face. A violent shake rolled through the floor, dust spilled from the ceiling cracks, and the chamber rang with a deep metallic groan. Somewhere above, Drake was forcing his way toward the stairwell that led down, and his soldiers were striking at the shrine guards who tried to delay them. Ben heard the sound and did not flinch. He had a secret in him, and the secret was not that he feared the Empire. It was that he had once helped build the first seal, long before Luke was born, because he believed the storm beast should never be used as a weapon. Emperor Vance wanted that power now, not to protect the land, but to command the weather itself, crush towns into obedience, and make every province bow beneath his banners. Ben had seen rulers like that before, only never one so patient and so cold. He knew Drake was dangerous, but he also knew Drake was only the hand. Vance was the mind. That truth made the chamber feel. Then the first Imperial impact landed above them, and the whole vault shuddered so hard that Myra nearly lost her balance. She caught herself on one palm, held the seal line with the other, and glared up as if anger could travel through stone. "They found the outer hall," she said. "They are breaking the stair shield now." Ben tightened his grip, and Luke saw the strain rise in the old man's shoulders. Ben could hold the chamber steady, but not forever, and everyone knew it. Luke stepped forward, and the blue light around his feet brightened in answer. The lines on the stone circle began to rise in glowing bands, then stretched upward across his ankles, his wrists, and the back of his hands. He gasped, not from pain, but from the shock of feeling the Relic's power move through him like a living current. The bond lines were not random marks. They were a map. That was the twist no one had understood until now. The Relic was not simply unlocking the chamber. It was matching him to the beast below, because the old Titan seal was built around a living bond, not a prison alone. Luke saw it in a flash of blue vision, quick and clear. Long ago, the first shrine keepers had not chained the storm beast just to trap it. They had asked a chosen human bond to share its burden, so the creature would not tear the world apart when rage or grief woke its power. The Empire had hidden that truth because if people knew the beast could be guided, then Vance could not pretend it was only a monster. He would have to admit that he wanted control, not safety. Luke staggered back one step, stunned by the meaning of it. The storm beast below was not calling for destruction. It was calling for a voice it could trust. But trust was hard when chains had been its only answer for so long. A new crash echoed from the stair above, louder than before. Drake was close now. His voice cut through the rumble like iron on stone. "Open the way," he ordered. "By command of the Empire, the relic belongs to us." His words were calm, and that calm made them worse, because Drake believed obedience was stronger than mercy. He thought the town needed control to survive, and he had convinced himself that fear was a fair price for order. Silas, the tall Imperial officer with black hair, a narrow face, sharp features, polished silver breastplate, dark military trousers, black gloves, and a formal command sash, stepped in behind him with cold certainty, his eyes already measuring the chamber like a map for conquest. Silas did not shout. He did not need to. He pointed his gloved hand at Luke, then at the seal, and spoke in a flat voice that carried easily through the shaking room. "If the relic bearer resists, isolate him and take the Myra snapped the last seal strip into place, and the chamber answered with a low humming sound that steadied the floor for a moment. She looked at Luke then, and her sharp green eyes softened just enough to show her trust. "You are the only one it is listening to now," she said. That means we need you, but it also means you must choose the shape of this bond. Luke swallowed hard. He had never wanted to be chosen by anything strange or heavy, and he had spent most of his life moving messages, avoiding trouble, and hoping the world would leave him alone. Yet the world had not left him alone, and now it had reached down into his bones. The blue lines on his skin glowed brighter, and he felt the beast below reacting, not with rage, but with a deep, restless ache, like a giant creature waking from a long, bad dream. Ben saw it too. He lowered his voice and spoke with the gentle care of a man sharing a burden he had carried too long. Luke, the first keepers made a bond because the beast was never meant to be ruled by fear. They hid the truth because kings always turn fear into chains. Luke looked at the old man, and in that moment he understood why Ben had stayed quiet for so long. Ben had been protecting a secret that might save the town or destroy it if the Empire learned it too soon. That was the cost of knowledge in a place like this. Upstairs, Drake was coming closer, and the clang of metal on stone sounded just beyond the sealed door. At the same time, the thunder above the clouds rolled again, and the storm relic in Luke's hand burned hot enough to force him to kneel. The shard hovered above his palm in a thin ring of blue sparks, and the chamber floor lit up with a full circle of power. That was when Luke made his second true choice. He did not choose the Empire, and he did not choose silence. He reached down with both hands, pressed the relic to the center mark, and let the bond open wider than fear. The chamber answered at once. Every blue sigil flared bright. The chained storm beast below let out a deep roaring surge that shook dust from the ceiling, but the surge did not break the seal. Instead, the old rings pulled tight and aligned, as if the beast had found the shape of its own breathing again. Drake struck the outer door, and Silas shouted for men to force it open, but the chamber had already changed. Luke stood inside the light, no longer a frightened courier trying to survive someone else's order. He was becoming the living link the shrine had hidden for generations. And as Ben braced the staff, Myra held the last line, and the Empire battered at the entrance. Luke felt the storm beast turn toward him from below, not as a weapon, but as a presence that knew his name. The next instant was coming fast, and everyone in the chamber could feel it. The seal was holding for now. Iron Hollow sat under a low, heavy sky, and the old shrine below it felt even colder than the streets above. Water dripped through cracked stone, dust clung to the walls, and blue light trembled across the carved floor of the hidden chamber. Ben stood near the center with his weathered staff planted hard against the seal, his gray hair damp and his warm face tight with worry. Myra kept close to the broken steps, her red hair tied back, her green eyes always moving, because she knew one mistake could let the Empire inside. Luke stood between them, pale and shaking, with black hair fallen across his tired eyes and the forbidden storm shard burning hot in his hand. The chamber was not just a hiding place anymore. It was a warning. If the seal failed, Captain Drake's soldiers would rush in, seize the relic, and hand it to Emperor Vance, whose cold rule already covered the land like a shadow. Vance wanted the storm power because he feared anything he could not command, and that fear had driven his armies to dig into the shrine town from above and below. That was the danger now, and everyone in the chamber felt it tighten like a rope. Another struck the outer door, and the whole chamber shivered. Stone powder fell from the arch, and Myra turned fast, ready to sprint if the barrier cracked. Ben did not step back, even though his knees looked weak beneath his tan robes. He held the staff with both hands and spoke in a calm voice that barely covered his fear. "Luke, listen to it," he said. "Do not fight what is calling you. Hear it first." Luke looked down at the shard, and the bright blue lines on its surface answered with a sharp pulse. The sound came again, not from the door, but from deep under the floor, like a huge creature breathing in slow, powerful waves. It was the chained storm beast. The presence was huge, old, and awake. It did not feel cruel. It felt trapped, angry, and strangely aware of him. Luke swallowed hard because the feeling in his chest was not simple fear. It was recognition. He had spent his life as a shrine courier, carrying messages, relic wraps, and old goods through wet streets, always told to keep his head down and ask no questions. But now the truth was pressing up from beneath him. And he could not ignore it. Myra stepped closer to him, her voice low and fast. "Whatever is happening, Luke, do not let Drake reach this room," she said. "He is not here for a ritual." He is here to take control. That was the first clear answer. Captain Drake was not just obeying. The next came stronger and the seal flashed brighter in reply. Ben's staff slipped a little in his hands, and for one brief moment, Luke saw something he had never noticed before. The carved circle on the floor was not just a seal. It was a ring of waiting marks, each one shaped like a link in a chain. Around the outer edge, hidden under dust, were the names of old shrine keepers, scratched in careful lines. Ben noticed Luke staring, and his calm face changed into something heavier. He had kept a secret for too long, and now the chamber itself was forcing it into the open. This shrine was built to hold the bond, Ben said quietly. Not to hide a beast from the world, but to keep a chosen soul from being crushed by it before the bond could wake. Myra looked at him with sharp disbelief, because even she had not known that part. Ben nodded once, and his bent back seemed older all at once. Your family line carried the first charge, he told Luke. Your mother knew. I helped her seal the shard here because Vance's people were already hunting it then. They wanted the storm power for the throne, and she feared what they would become if they got it. Luke's chest tightened. His mother had never been a mystery before, only a gentle memory wrapped in a few old stories, but now her choice stood before him like a doorway. She had hidden the shard not because she feared the beast, but because she feared the Emperor. That was the twist no one had spoken aloud until now. The Empire did not want to destroy the shrine. It wanted to own the Storm Bond, because a ruler who controlled thunder could crush every town that refused to kneel. Luke stared at Ben, then at Myra, and then at the glowing. Then the floor answered for him. A deep pulse rolled up through Luke's boots, and the blue marks on the shard leaped across his hand like living lightning. He gasped and dropped to one knee, not from pain alone, but from the force of a voice inside his mind. It was not words at first, it was feeling, image, pressure, and direction all at once. The beast below was not asking to be used, it was asking to be recognized. Luke saw flashes of dark clouds, iron harnesses, and chains wrapped around a great body that had once moved freely over the storm fields beyond town. He saw men from the Empire forcing the creature down with shock poles and heavy rings, not because it had attacked them, but because they had wanted to break its will. That memory hit hard, and Luke's eyes widened. The storm beast had been chained when it refused to bow to Vance. It had not served the Empire. It had resisted it. That made everything clearer. Luke was not being called to command a weapon. He was being called to free a guardian. His blue markings began to spread up his wrist in thin, shining lines, and the chamber glowed around him. Myra reached for him, but Ben lifted one hand to stop her. Let it happen, he said, his voice strained but sure. He must answer it on his own. Outside, another heavy crashed against the entrance, and this one carried a new sound behind it, the sharp ring of metal on stone as the Empire tested the seal with tools. Captain Drake's voice followed, cold and calm through the door. The shrine cannot hold forever, he called. Open the chamber and the Emperor may choose mercy. Myra barked a short laugh because she knew that word was a lie. Drake did not offer mercy. He offered surrender with a prettier name. She drew closer to the door, both hands ready, her face set in hard focus. Ben planted his staff again, and Luke rose slowly from one knee. Luke looked toward the center of the seal, and for the first time he understood what it wanted from him. The old chamber was not asking for strength alone, it was asking for trust. The shard in his hand heated until it was almost too bright to hold, and the blue lines on his skin matched the lines carved into the floor. He stepped forward, and each step seemed to wake the room more fully, as if the shrine had waited years for this exact moment. Ben's face softened with relief and grief together because he could see that Luke was no longer just a courier who carried relics. He was becoming the Bond's chosen witness. Myra watched him with fierce loyalty, the kind that never needed grand words. She did not fully understand the old power, but she understood Luke, and that was enough. Another strike hit the outer barrier, and stone dust burst from the seams. This time the seal did not just tremble, it cracked in a thin, bright line. Ben's eyes sharpened. Now, Luke, he said, answer it or we lose everything. Luke lifted the shard with both hands, and the chamber filled with blue firelight. From below, the storm beast answered with a single vast breath, and the floor circle opened in glowing lines like a hidden eye. The chains were still there in the vision, the Empire was still outside, and the next choice had not yet been made. But the truth was now impossible to hide. The beast knew Luke by name, the bond had awakened, and whatever waited in the dark below the shrine was ready to change the fight above it. In that charged silence, with Drake pressing at the door and Vance's shadow still hanging over, Iron Hollow sat under a heavy sky where rain clouds moved low and the stone roofs always looked cold. The narrow streets were wet, the shrine bells were silent, and every house seemed to hold its breath as the Empire's shadow hung above the town. Below the old central shrine, in a chamber carved by hands long gone, Luke stood inside a circle of blue marks that had not glowed for many years. He was a young man with black hair, pale skin, and tired but determined eyes, wearing a simple brown shrine courier robe, a dark cloth sash, worn boots, and a small satchel for messages and relic wraps. He had spent his life carrying sealed orders and hidden tools, never thinking he would matter to anyone. But now the storm relic in his hand was warm, the chamber walls were humming, and the truth was clear: if the power below the shrine was lost, Iron Hollow would fall under Emperor Vance's rule, and everyone he cared about would be trapped beneath it. Up above, Captain Drake was still forcing his way in, and the pressure of that threat made the air feel thin. Drake was a stern man with brown hair, hard eyes, and silver Empire armor with dark trim, wearing a high-collared cape and carrying a command spear. He believed order was more important than mercy, and he had come to take the relic no matter who stood in his way. Beside Luke, Elder Ben had been trying to guide him through fear and memory. Ben was an older man with gray hair, a bent back, warm eyes, and a calm face, wearing layered tan shrine robes, prayer beads, and holding a weathered wooden staff. He had kept old secrets for years because he knew the Empire would use the shrine's power to control the storm above the land. Myra was there too, moving fast at the edge of the chamber, a young woman with red hair, sharp green eyes, and a focused expression, wearing a fitted dark shrine messenger outfit with a short coat, leather gloves, and a pouch of records and seals. She had spent the whole night checking notes, locking doors, and looking for a way to keep the town alive. Now all of them watched as Luke's. The first sign that the chamber had fully awakened was not a shout or an attack. It was a low pulse of blue light that spread across the stone like a living path. The etched lines in the floor brightened one by one, then ran up the pillars, then reached the old seal marks near the back wall. Luke felt the relic in his hand pull hard, as if it wanted to return to the chamber and finish something ancient. It was a small, forbidden iron shard shaped like a jagged seed, with bright blue lightning-like lines etched across its surface, and it glowed hotter whenever thunder came close. Luke had touched it before, but now it felt different because it was no longer only an object. It was answering him. His skin prickled, his breath caught, and glowing blue Titan bond lines began to spread across his forearms. The marks were not random. They traced his arms like living lightning, telling him that the bond had chosen him whether he was ready or not. Ben saw the change and did not hide his worry. He had feared this moment for years because the shrine had always held a sealed storm heart below it, and he had promised the old keepers never to let the Empire learn what was buried here. Myra stepped closer, her voice low and fast, and told Luke that Drake had brought more soldiers to the outer gate. That meant time was running out. The Empire had not come just to scare the town. They wanted the relic, the seal, and the power beneath both because Emperor Vance believed any force that could command the sky should belong to his crown. He did not care about the shrine, the beast, or the town. He cared about control. That was why he had sent Drake in front, and why the banners above the clouds carried black and gold storm sigils that made the whole sky look like a warning. Luke looked at the glowing circle, then at Ben, and finally at Myra, and he asked the one question that had been growing in him since the first vision: what is down here? Ben answered at last, and his calm face looked older than before. He said the thing below was not a monster in the way the Empire would call it. It was a chained storm beast, a guardian bound long ago to protect the shrine and the land around it. Long ago, when the Empire still wanted this region, the first shrine keepers trapped the beast inside iron harnesses and heavy chain rings, not to punish it, but to keep anyone from using its storm power to burn the world open. The beast had not been sleeping. It had been waiting, listening, and growing weaker every year. Then the chamber changed again, and the air split with a deep sound like thunder heard through stone. From the far wall, a crack of blue light opened in a carved seam, and Luke saw movement behind it. Heavy chain rings slid across stone. Sparks scattered in the dark. A huge shape shifted below the chamber, and the chain storm beast raised its head into the light. It was far larger than any horse or ox, with crackling energy moving over its body, iron harnesses locked around its shoulders, and bright eyes that burned through the shadows. It looked fierce, but it did not strike at once. Instead, it fixed its gaze on Luke, and the chamber seemed to hold its breath. The beast knew him by name because the Titan bond had already reached across the seal. It spoke again, not with words from a human mouth, but with a heavy voice that filled the room like rolling thunder. It told Luke that the bond had awakened because the shrine bloodline had returned, and because the storm had chosen a living heart to carry its old oath. Luke did not understand all of it, but he understood enough to know that the beast was not his enemy. It was waiting for him to decide whether the bond would be used to protect or to command. That was when the true twist came into view. Ben finally admitted that Luke was not just a courier who stumbled into the secret. Luke was descended from the original shrine line that first bound the storm beast to the chamber. His family had not only protected the town, but had carried the right to awaken the seal when the world turned dangerous again. Luke had been chosen long before he knew his own name mattered here. The revelation struck him hard because it meant the strange pull he had felt all his life was not a mistake. It was inheritance. Myra looked at him with a mix of shock and hope because she could see the change in his face. He was no longer just above them. The pressure at the shrine door turned into a violent impact. Dust fell from the ceiling and the stone floor shuddered under the force. Captain Drake had brought a battering line and was no longer pretending patience. His command was simple, cold, and cruel in its honesty: open the chamber, surrender the relic, and let the Empire secure the town for its own good. Ben knew that meant the end of every promise he had ever made. Myra knew that it would mean the records she carried would be taken, burned, or used to erase the Shrine's past. Luke knew it would mean Iron Hollow would become a supply post under Vance's banners, with the Sky Fortress overhead watching every move. The giant dark flying stronghold hung above the clouds like a moving castle, with heavy platforms, storm engines, and imperial banners swaying in the wind. Its shadow crossed the town, and everyone below it could feel how little freedom they had left. Luke looked at the storm beast again, and this time he did not step back. The blue Titan bond lines on his arms brightened, and the relic in his palm hummed like a second heartbeat. He asked the beast what would happen if he accepted the bond. The beast answered that the seal would open enough for one choice, and that choice would decide whether the storm would rise as a shield or break loose as a weapon. That was the real danger, and it explained why Ben had been so afraid. If the bond was forced, the storm could turn wild. If it was accepted with fear and anger, it could overwhelm the town. But if Luke held it with trust, it could become a wall against the Empire. Luke swallowed hard, thinking of the people above ground, the children who listened to thunder from their windows, and the workers who had nowhere else to go. He thought of Myra's steady hands, Ben's worn staff, and every message he had ever carried without understanding its truth. The chamber answered him at once. Blue light surged through the circle, up his arms, and across the seal lines in the floor. The chain storm beast lowered its head, not in defeat, but in recognition. The iron harnesses around it rattled, then loosened just enough for the air to move freely around its body. Luke felt the bond settle inside him like a storm finding its path through a broken valley. He was afraid, but he was no longer alone inside the fear. Myra shouted that Drake was breaking through the outer gate, and Ben raised his staff, calling for the old seal marks to hold a little longer. The chamber wall split with another heavy and cold air rushed in from above. But this time, the sound did not shake Luke apart. It steadied him. He turned toward the stairway leading up to the shrine, and for the first time, he did not look like a courier waiting for orders. He looked like the person the shrine had been waiting for all along. The storm beast spoke one last warning through the stone, saying that Vance would not stop after this attempt, because the Emperor feared anything he could not control, and the bond now stood between his empire and the power he wanted most. Luke nodded because he finally understood the full shape of the battle. This was not just about one relic or one town. It was about whether old power would be used to protect people or to rule them. He, Ben, and Myra still had work to do, and Drake was still pushing above, but the next step was no longer hidden. Luke lifted his head, the blue marks across his skin glowing in the dim chamber, and he moved toward the stairs with a new kind of courage. Iron Hollow sat beneath a bruised sky where cold wind slid between wet stone streets and made every roof shine like dark glass. The old shrine stood at the center of town, quiet on the outside, but heavy with buried power below. Above the clouds, the Empire's sky fortress waited like a silent threat, and everyone in the town felt the same fear growing in their chest. This was no longer a small fight over a relic hidden in dust. It was a fight over who would command the old storm power, and that choice could save the town or crush it under Imperial rule. Luke moved up from the chamber with his black hair damp against his forehead, his pale face set hard, and his tired eyes now steady with new resolve. The blue Titan bond lines across his skin glowed softly under his robe, and they flashed each time thunder rolled far above the shrine. He was a shrine courier before all this, a simple young man who carried messages and wrapped relics, but the storm had marked him because he mattered to something much larger than himself. Beside him, Elder Ben kept one hand on his weathered staff, his gray hair tied back in a loose, practical way, his bent back hiding a mind full of old secrets. Ben wanted only to keep the town safe, and he had spent his whole life guarding truths that too many greedy people would misuse. Myra followed close behind, her red hair pulled back so it would not catch in her eyes, her sharp green eyes scanning every stair and wall. She was young, fast, and careful, and she wanted the same thing Ben wanted, which was for the truth to stay in the right hands. Above them all, Captain Drake pressed his soldiers through the upper shrine hall, his brown hair slick under his silver armor, his voice cold and certain as he ordered the town brought under control. Drake did not believe in mercy when he thought obedience would work better, and he wanted the Storm Relic because Emperor Vance had ordered it taken. Vance himself was still. Luke reached the stair landing first, and the blue marks on his arms gave a weak pulse when he touched the railing. He felt the storm in the stone, almost like the chamber below was breathing under his feet. Ben saw his hesitation and placed a calm hand on his shoulder. He did not speak like a commander. He spoke like a man who knew fear and had learned how to stand anyway. He told Luke that the relic was never meant to make a king, and it was never meant to make a beast into a slave. It was a lock and a bond, built long ago by shrine keepers who feared the sky warriors of the First Empire. Those old keepers had chained the storm beast beneath the shrine because it was powerful enough to protect a whole land, but also dangerous enough for rulers to abuse. That was why Ben had hidden parts of the truth for so long. If Drake or Vance learned the full path of the seal, they would force the beast into service and turn Iron Hollow into the first broken town in a larger war. Myra pulled a folded record from her pouch and opened it with quick fingers. The pages were old, stained, and filled with seal marks that matched the glowing signs in the chamber floor. She had spent years copying shrine records and tracking old routes through the town, and now her careful work finally mattered. She showed Luke a mark that matched the blue lines on his skin, then pointed to a second symbol that described the beast's chain rings and storm harness. The bond had a rule, and that rule was simple but dangerous. The relic did not obey force. It answered intent. If the person carrying it wanted power for themselves, the bond tightened and burned. If the person wanted to protect others, the bond opened and gave strength through trust. Luke stared at the page, and for the first time, he understood why the blue marks had come to him instead of to Drake. He was not chosen because he was strong enough. He was chosen because the storm could sense what he wanted most. A deep of metal echoed from above, and dust dropped from the stair ceiling. Drake's voice called down through the shrine hall, sharp and flat, demanding that Luke surrender the relic and come out with his hands raised. The captain had already sent Imperial soldiers to close the courtyard doors, and the town's inner paths were filling with dark uniforms and spear points. Ben lifted his staff and told Luke and Myra that the upper hall could not hold for long. He had hidden one more secret under the shrine, a narrow path that led to the old seal platform, and if they reached it before Drake broke through, they might still turn the relic back toward protection. That was the larger truth at the center of all their fear. The Empire did not only want the storm beast, it wanted a living symbol that could make every town in the region kneel without a fight. If Vance controlled the beast, he could hold the skies, control trade, and silence anyone who resisted. The three of them moved fast through a side corridor lit by weak blue lamps, and every step carried more pressure than the last. The air grew colder, and the stone walls began to hum in response to Luke's glowing marks. Myra led the way because she knew the shrine layout best, and she moved with a quiet confidence that made her seem older than she was. Ben stayed in the center, guarding the rear with his staff and his steady breath. Luke brought up the back, and he could feel the bond inside him stirring like a living storm trying to wake fully. At the far end of the corridor, they found a round stone door with a carved ring and a broken seal line across its face. Ben placed his palm against it and whispered the old words, and the door shuddered open with a sound like distant thunder. Beyond it was the seal platform, a wide chamber ringed by tall stone columns and painted with glowing blue symbols that matched Luke's skin. In the center stood the chained storm beast, huge and crouched, its iron harness covered in crackling lines, its chain rings hanging from thick anchor posts in the floor. Its bright eyes fixed on Luke at once, and the marks on his skin flared in answer. Luke stopped breathing for a moment because the beast was both terrifying and strange, not a mindless monster but a burdened creature trapped for too long. Its storm energy snapped across its back in tiny bursts, but it did not charge. It watched, it waited. Myra looked at the chain anchors and saw that 2 of them had already been loosened by the earlier clash, which meant Drake had been forcing the seal open from above. That was the twist Ben had feared, and it was now clear to everyone in the chamber. Drake had not come only to steal the relic. He had been weakening the prison so that the beast would panic and lash out, giving the Empire a reason to claim control. He wanted the town to look unsafe because fear made people easier to rule. Ben clenched his jaw, and for a rare moment, his calm face showed real anger. He told Luke that the old shrine keepers had built the seal chamber as a test, not a cage forever. The beast would wake if someone with the right heart carried the relic into the circle and made a choice to guide it instead of command it. Then the floor above them shook again, harder this time, and a section of stone dust slid from the ceiling like gray rain. Drake was breaking through. His soldiers shouted from the upper hall, and a hammering sound rolled through the shrine walls. Myra looked at Luke and gave him the truth in one simple sentence. If he hesitated now, the Empire would take the chamber, take the beast, and turn the whole town into a warning to everyone else. Luke swallowed, then stepped into the center ring with the relic wrapped in both hands. The blue lines across his skin spread brighter, climbing his neck and forearms, and the chamber lights answered like stars underwater. The storm beast lowered its head, and the chain rings around its body rattled as the bond between them grew stronger. Luke did not try to dominate it. He spoke to it the way Ben had spoken to him, with trust instead of force. He told it that he did not want a weapon, he wanted a shield. He wanted iron hollow safe. The beast's bright eyes softened, and a deep wave of power rolled through the chamber, filling every carved line on the floor with blue light. The chain storm beast rose, not an attack but an answer. A thunderous crash split the upper seal, and a beam of imperial light cut through the dust. Drake appeared at the broken edge of the chamber entrance, silver armor gleaming in the storm glow, his command spear held low and ready. His hard eyes locked on Luke, then on the awakened beast, and for the first time his face showed real surprise. He had expected panic. He had expected control. Instead, he saw a bond he could not easily break. He shouted for the soldiers to hold the line, and they advanced in a tight formation, trying to close the chamber before the power could spread farther. Ben raised his staff and struck the floor once, releasing a ring of old shrine light that pushed the front line back. Myra moved along the side wall, pulling a seal pin from her pouch and locking it into a cracked anchor, which forced one of the loose chain rings to tighten again and stop the chamber from collapsing. Luke felt the beast move with him, not as a master and servant, but as 2 parts of the same storm. Together, they drove a wave of blue force across the chamber floor, and the Imperial soldiers were forced to retreat to the stair edge. Drake did not flee because men like him rarely ran when they still believed they could win. He planted his spear, braced against the storm pressure, and told Luke that Emperor Vance would not forget this insult. He said the Empire would return with more force, more banners, and more sky engines if it had to. That threat did not sound empty, and everyone in the chamber knew it. But Drake also looked at the beast with open suspicion, and that gave Luke one more important truth. Drake did not fully understand what he had been sent to take. He had obeyed orders, but Vance had kept the deepest part of the plan hidden from him too. That made him dangerous, but it also made him a tool of a larger will. Ben saw that look and understood the next battle would not be won by strength alone. It would take proof, timing, and perhaps even a crack in the Empire's own control. For now, the chamber held. The beast remained awake, the seal still stood, and Iron Hollow had not yet fallen. Luke lowered his hands slowly, breathing hard while the blue marks across his skin dimmed to a steady glow. He was still afraid, but now his fear had changed shape. It no longer ruled him. He knew he could be part of something larger without becoming cruel. Myra gave him a small nod that meant she trusted him more than before. Ben rested on his staff and looked at the old symbols with tired relief, though he knew the danger was only paused. Above them, the storm fortress still hung in the clouds, and its shadow still covered the town. Somewhere inside it, Emperor Vance was learning that the relic had awakened in the wrong hands for his plan. Luke looked toward the stairway where Drake had vanished, and he knew the next clash was already coming. But now he also knew what he was fighting for, and that made all the difference as the storm beat on the shrine walls and the story moved into its next dangerous step. Iron Hollow stayed dark beneath the moving clouds, and the rain kept sliding down its stone roofs like cold, steady tears. The central shrine stood at the town's heart, old and heavy, with worn steps, wet lanterns, and walls that had sheltered generations of quiet lives. But peace had already been broken, and everyone inside knew it. Above them, the sky fortress still hung in the storm, black banners snapping in the wind, while its shadow pressed across the town like a warning that would not leave. Luke stood inside the shrine hall with his dark cloth sash soaked through, his tired black hair clinging to his forehead, and the small forbidden shard resting in a wrapped cloth against his palm. He was a simple shrine courier by trade, but that night he was also the one person the relic had chosen. That choice mattered because the Empire wanted the shard for control, and the shrine keepers feared it because it could wake the old power under the town. Elder Ben, the gray-haired old man with a bent back and calm eyes, had hidden that truth for years. Myra, the red-haired young woman with sharp green eyes and a pouch full of records and seals, had come because she believed facts could save lives when fear could not. And Captain Drake, the hard-eyed Imperial hunter with brown hair, silver armor, and a command spear, had vanished down the stairway below with the clear intent to finish what he started. Luke knew the next clash was coming, and he also knew the result would decide whether Iron Hollow stayed free or became another silent mark under Emperor Vance's rule. Myra was the first to move because she never wasted a second when danger was closing in. She crossed the shrine floor with quick steps, her leather gloves wet from the storm, and laid open a bundle of records on a low stone table. The pages were old, but the marks on them matched the blue lines now glowing faintly across Luke's skin. Ben lowered his weathered staff and watched the relic with a face that stayed calm only by force of habit. He had spent years guarding a secret that he thought would die with him, and now that secret was awake and breathing through Luke's bond. "The chamber below is real," Ben said in a low voice, each word careful and heavy. It was sealed by the first shrine keepers after the storm beast was chained beneath the town. The Empire found half the story, but not the whole truth. Myra pointed to a circle in the records, then to a broken line of text beside it. The Titan Seal Chamber, as the old script named it, was not just a vault. It was a lock, and the relic was the key that could either hold the beast in place or release its storm into the sky. Luke stared at the words and felt his stomach tighten. He had thought he was carrying a dangerous object. Now he understood he was carrying a choice that could protect the town or ruin it. Ben then confessed the part he had hidden for too long. Long ago, the Shrine Elders had used the relic to bind the chained storm beast after it began tearing through the mountain passes in wild fear. The beast had never been evil. It had been captured by the Empire only because its storm power could move sky engines and power fortress weapons. Emperor Vance wanted that same power now, not to save anyone, but to make the fortress above untouchable. That truth settled over the room like a second storm, and Luke felt anger rise again, but this time it came with purpose instead of panic. Before anyone could speak again, a heavy sound rolled through the shrine from the stairwell below, followed by the sharp ring of metal against stone. Drake had not gone far. He was testing the lower passage, searching for the chamber and making sure the shrine would not stay a hiding place for long. Myra snapped her records shut and said the simple truth. If Drake reaches the seal chamber first, he can open the path for Vance. Ben gripped his staff a little tighter and told Luke that the blue marks on his body were not a curse alone. They were Titan Bond lines, old marks that appeared when a human heart could carry the Relic's storm without being torn apart. The marks had awakened in the wrong hands, Ben admitted, but not by mistake. Luke had been chosen because he still cared about people more than power. That was the only thing the relic could trust. The honesty of that answer hit Luke harder than the storm wind. He had spent most of his life running messages, avoiding trouble, and thinking small because small felt safe. Now he stood between a fortress and a town, with people depending on him to be more than he had ever been before. The shrine lamps trembled as another deep rumble shook the walls. Then a voice drifted up from below, cold and clear, and the tone made Myra's face harden at once. It was Drake, speaking to unseen soldiers in the passage. He ordered them to surround the lower chamber and hold every exit. He spoke like a man sure that obedience was more important than mercy. Ben closed his eyes for one brief moment, then opened them again with resolve. "We go down now," he said. "If the chamber wakes, it wakes with us." The stairs beneath the shrine were narrow, old, and slick with cold water. Luke led with a lantern in one hand and the wrapped relic in the other, while Myra moved beside him, checking each corner with fast, sharp glances. Ben followed behind them, slower than the others but steady, his staff striking the steps in a measured rhythm. The lower halls smelled of dust, wet stone, and something older, like iron that had slept too long. The deeper they went, the more the blue glow in Luke's palm began to answer the walls. Thin lines of light appeared in the carvings, one after another, until the old stone itself seemed to wake. Then they reached the Titan seal chamber. It was huge, round, and carved from deep gray rock, with a giant circle in the center of the floor and bright blue sigils tracing the edges like sleeping fire. Broken chains hung from the walls, and old marks showed where the shrine keepers had once stood guard in fear and hope at the same time. But before Luke could step fully inside, Drake appeared at the far end of the chamber with two Imperial soldiers behind him, their armor dull in the low light and their spears angled forward. Drake's brown hair was damp from the storm, and his hard eyes fixed on Luke as if he were already measuring a prize. "Hand over the relic," Drake said, his voice smooth and cold. "You were never meant to hold it." Luke answered by tightening his grip instead. Myra moved to the side, blocking the line between the soldiers, and Ben raised his staff, and the chamber sigils flashed brighter in response, as if the room itself recognized the shrine keeper. Drake's expression barely changed, but the command in his voice sharpened. The soldiers rushed forward not to kill, but to overwhelm and seize control, and the chamber erupted into motion. Luke dodged the first strike, slid across the wet stone, and felt the relic burn hotter in his hand. Blue lines raced up his wrist, across his arm, and into his shoulder, while a low thunder sound began to build beneath the floor. Myra used her seals with fast, clever hands, throwing a paper marker that burst into a bright flash and forced one soldier back. Ben struck the stone once with his staff, and the chamber floor answered with a deep hum that pushed the intruders away from the center circle. Drake did not panic. He watched everything, then stepped forward through the clash as if he expected the room to obey him. "Vance does not need the whole town," Drake said. "He only needs the beast to rise once, and the fortress will control the storm forever." That was the twist Luke needed, the missing piece that made the Empire's plan clear. They were not guarding Iron Hollow. They were turning it into a power source, and the chained storm beast was the engine at the heart of it. Then the chamber changed. The relic in Luke's hand pulsed once, hard and bright, and the giant circle on the floor lit up in full blue flame. The sigils climbed the walls, the broken chains rattled, and a deep, distant roar rolled up through the stone from somewhere far below the chamber. The sound was huge, sad, and furious all at once. The chained storm beast had felt the bond. Luke froze for one breath, then saw a vision flash through his mind, not as words, but as a simple truth. The beast had been sealed beneath the town not because it was a monster, but because it was strong enough to resist the Empire. Vance had twisted that old fear into a weapon for control. The beast's chain rings were not just restraints. They were anchors tied to the fortress above. If the Empire pulled the wrong way, the storm could tear across the town. If Luke could steady the bond, he might turn the storm away. Ben saw the same truth in Luke's face, and for the first time he did not look worried. He looked proud, because the boy he had protected was finally becoming someone who could protect others. Drake barked an order, and the soldiers lunged again, but the chamber floor erupted in a wave of blue light that drove them back several steps. Myra grabbed Luke's shoulder and shouted that he had to stand in the center circle. It was the only place the relic could speak clearly to the seal. Luke ran there, the blue lines on his skin blazing like bright cracks in glass, and he held the shard high with both hands. He was scared, and that mattered, because brave people feel fear too, but he did not run. He did not hide. He He looked up through the chamber ceiling toward the fortress shadow above, and he understood that Vance was not only after power. He was afraid of anything he could not own. That was why he used storms, soldiers, and silence. That was why he needed the relic so badly. Luke planted his feet, took a steady breath, and answered the bond with a clear, simple promise that echoed through the chamber and into the stone below. He would not let the town be used. He would not let the beast be chained forever. And he would not let the Empire turn fear into law. The blue light burst outward, the chamber roared back to life, and the next step of the battle began, even as Drake lifted his spear and prepared to strike again. Blue light raced across the Titan seal chamber, and the old stone floor answered like a sleeping drum coming back to life. The carved circle burned with clean lines, the hidden marks along the walls flashed one by one, and dust rose in slow sheets from the floor. Luke stood in the center of it all, with his black hair falling over his pale face, his brown courier robe shaking from the force of the bond, and his tired eyes now sharp with purpose. He was not a warrior by training, and he was not born for this ancient chamber, but he mattered because the relic had chosen him. Beside him, Elder Ben lifted his weathered staff with both hands, his gray hair loose around a worried face, while Myra, the quick young woman with red hair and green eyes, slid to the side with her pouch of records and seals pressed close to her hip. All three of them understood the same terrible truth now. If Captain Drake took the relic, the Empire would use the Storm Beast, crush Iron Hollow, and chain every person who lived under the clouds into obedience. Drake himself was already moving forward with his command spear raised, his brown hair slick against a hard face, his silver armor catching the blue glow like cold fire. He did not look frightened. He looked certain, and that made him even more dangerous. Drake struck first, and the spear swept through the air with a sharp metallic cry. Luke felt the chamber pulse through his bones, and the glowing blue Titan lines spread farther along his arms and chest, bright and alive like rivers of lightning under his skin. The bond did not feel wild anymore. It felt awake, listening, and waiting for him to choose. He planted his boots on the stone, pulled the relic focus deeper into his palm, and pushed back against Drake's force with both will and body. The clash sent a wave through the chamber, hard enough to make Myra stumble and catch herself against the wall. She opened her pouch with quick fingers, found a seal strip, and slapped it onto a cracked sigil to keep the chamber marks from collapsing. Her sharp mind mattered here as much as any blade, because she knew the old records and could read the signs that Ben had hidden from the Empire for years. Ben's calm face had changed too. The gentle old man now looked like someone carrying a secret too heavy for one life, and in a steady voice he called out, telling Luke that the bond was not a curse. It was a promise made long ago by people who feared power in the wrong hands. The storm beast below the chamber had been sealed, not to be punished, but to keep the Empire from forcing it into battle. That was why the relic had to stay hidden. That was why Emperor Vance had sent Drake. Vance wanted the beast, the storm engines, and the old Titan force because a ruler who controls fear can rule without mercy. And under the black and gold banners of the sky fortress above the clouds, that kind of ruler could turn an entire land into a cage. Drake heard enough of that to understand the danger, and his expression tightened with cold anger. He was not a mindless brute. He was an officer who believed order made the world safe, and he served Emperor Vance because he thought chaos would destroy the realm faster than harsh rule ever could. That belief made him a true threat because it gave his cruelty a reason. He stepped back, drove the butt of his spear into the stone, and sent a crack of force across the floor toward Luke. The chamber shook, but Luke answered with the relic's blue light, and for one clear moment the power bent around him instead of breaking him. He saw the chamber in a new way, as if the ancient lines were speaking in a language made of thunder and memory. He saw the storm beast far below, huge and chained, its glowing eyes opening in pain and confusion. He saw iron harnesses wrapped around its body, and he understood that the beast was not the enemy. It was a living guardian, weakened and used until it had forgotten its own name. The sight struck him hard. Luke had spent most of his life carrying messages, keeping his head down and trying not to matter too much. Now he realized that being small did not mean being powerless, and that choice was the strongest thing a person could carry. Myra moved first when the chamber ceiling groaned overhead. She ran to a side dais, knelt beside an old lock plate, and used one of Ben's seal tags to open a hidden groove in the stone. Her red hair flashed under the blue light as she pulled out a narrow shrine ledger wrapped in oilcloth. The book had been hidden there long before the Empire came, and it held the old warnings. She flipped it open with fast, careful hands, and the pages showed a map of the chamber, the beast below, and the storm rails leading up to the Sky Fortress. Her eyes widened as she found the part Ben had never wanted the Empire to read. The relic was not only a key, it was also a voice. It could wake the bond, command the seal, and call the storm beast to either rise or settle. That was the twist hidden in plain sight. The Empire had spread the story that the relic was forbidden because it was too dangerous, but the true reason was worse. It had been forbidden because it belonged to the town, not the throne. Vance feared any power that answered ordinary people instead of rulers. Ben closed his eyes for a brief moment, as if the truth had been weighing on him for decades. Then he admitted what he had kept from Luke. Long ago, the Shrine Keepers had split the relic away from the seal so the Empire could never use both together. Ben had guarded the last piece not out of mistrust, but because he was waiting for someone with an honest heart to hear the bond without becoming hungry for it. He had hoped that person would come before the Empire found the chamber. Now Luke understood why Ben had looked so burdened every time he spoke about duty. The old man had been protecting a future he could barely afford to believe in. Drake pressed harder and the chamber began to fail around them. Blue lines on the walls dimmed, one by one, as imperial pressure from above pushed through the stone. Somewhere beyond the shrine, Iron Hollow trembled under the shadow of the Sky Fortress, and the narrow streets above would soon be flooded with soldiers if Luke could not hold the seal. The stakes were no longer only the chamber or the beast. They were the homes, wells, roofs, and sleeping families of the town itself. Luke felt that weight settle on him, and for a brief moment fear tried to return. He was still just a courier. He was still tired. He still did not know all the rules of the bond. But then he looked at Myra, who had chosen danger over silence, and at Ben, who had carried truth alone for too long, and he realized something simple. He did not need to be perfect. He only needed to keep choosing the people in front of him. He lifted the relic higher, and the blue marks on his body flared brighter, wrapping around his arms like living armor. The chamber answered at once. Deep below, the storm beast drew in a long breath, and the iron rings around its body rattled with a heavy, rising sound. Drake saw it happen and ordered Luke to stop, but Luke did not step back. He spoke the same promise again, this time louder and steadier, telling the chamber, the beast, and the old stone that no town should be turned into a weapon for a cruel throne. The blue sigils around him rose in a ring of light, and the chamber doors to the lower vault began to unlock with a deep, grinding sound. Then the far wall split with a violent flash, not from Drake's spear, but from the storm pressure below. A huge crack ran through the ancient stone, and cold wind rushed up from the depths as if something immense had stirred awake. Myra shouted that the lower seal was opening. Ben gripped his staff and told Luke that this was the true test, because once the lower vault opened, the beast would hear the bond fully. Drake, for the first time, looked uncertain. His belief in control could not explain what he was seeing, and that small doubt made him dangerous in a new way, because a cornered hunter strikes harder. He lifted his spear again, but before he could drive forward, the floor beneath him flashed with blue marks and shoved him back a step. Luke did not chase him, he did not taunt him. Instead, he turned toward the opening vault and felt the bond pull like a hand asking to be trusted. The chamber below was waking, the beast was stirring, and somewhere above them, Emperor Vance's orders were already moving across the Sky Fortress. The battle was not finished, it was only growing larger. Luke held his ground, Myra gathered the last of the shrine records, and Ben stared into the opening with grief and hope mixed together on his calm face. What came next would decide whether Iron Hollow remained a home or became the first place in the Empire to kneel. And as the thunder rolled through the stone, Luke stepped toward the opening light, ready for the next part of the fight, even as Drake gathered himself for one more strike.
Iron Hollow trembled under a low, heavy sky, and every wet stone street seemed to hold its breath. The old shrine stood at the center of town like a tired guard that had never truly slept, while black clouds rolled above the rooftops and made the whole place feel smaller than it was. Far above clouds, the Empire's Sky Fortress hung in silence, its dark shape pressing down on the town like a threat that never blinked. Inside the shrine passage, Luke stood at the
Below Iron Hollow, the stone chamber opened like a buried eye, and cold blue light spilled across the floor. Luke stood at the center of it, his black hair damp with sweat, his brown courier robe shaking with every thunder above. Elder Ben was behind him with his gray hair falling over his face, his weathered staff planted hard on the ground, while Myra, with her red hair tied back and her green eyes wide, rushed to the side wall and looked for a way to seal the chamber. The ancient circle on the floor began to wake, and the storm relic in Luke's hand grew hot enough to sting. Ben finally told the truth, and his calm voice carried deep regret. The relic was never a tool for power. It was a key that kept a chained storm beast asleep beneath the shrine, because the beast fed the town as storm barriers and shielded Iron Hollow from the sky fortress above. Emperor Vance wanted it not to save the town, but to drain the beast, break the barriers, and take the whole region without a fight. Then Captain Drake came through the broken stairway with armored soldiers behind him, his brown hair slick under the storm light and his command spear pointed straight at Luke. He did not shout, because men like him never needed to. He said the Empire would bring order, and he said resistance would only leave the town powerless. But Myra snapped back with the records she had stolen, proving Vance had planned to bury Iron Hollow's shrine after stripping it clean. At that moment, Luke understood the worst truth of all. Ben had hidden the relic not because he mistrusted Luke, but because he feared the bond would choose a frightened heart and turn it into a burden. Luke looked at the glowing lines racing over his arms, and for the first time he did not pull away from them. He pressed the relic into the center seal, and the chamber shook as blue symbols rose into the air. The chain storm beast woke, huge and bright-eyed, but Luke did not fight it. He spoke to it, steady and clear, and the Titan bond answered him like a deep voice in the stone. The beast turned from rage to strength, drove the Imperial soldiers back, and shattered Drake's hold on the chamber. Above them, the sky fortress lost its grip on the storm and drifted into the dark clouds. Drake fell back in shock, forced to retreat with his remaining men, and his cold certainty finally cracked. Ben lowered his head in relief, Myra smiled through the fear, and Luke stood taller than before, no longer just a messenger. Iron Hollow was safe for now, and Luke had become its true guardian, not because he was chosen by power, but because he chose to carry it with trust and courage.